Hello, guys, and welcome back to episode number 2 of the Weekly Blitz. I am joined by Jackson McIntyre, former PFF senior analyst, and today we are going to go over the biggest storylines of week 1 of the NFL season. Jackson, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, man. It was a good weekend of football. A little bit of rust from the quarterbacks, I'd say. Part of me is wondering if some of that was the lack of preseason play that we saw this year, but I think we'll see much better going forward from them.
Now, our goal on the Weekly Blitz is to give you the most information about the given week that happened in the NFL season every single episode. And I'm going to start it off with a segment we call the Blitz. And these are some of the biggest headlines, grouping games into one headline. Let me talk about the upsets, the Patriots and the Bengals. I thought it was flat out embarrassing that the Bengals lost against a Patriots team that we all feel like is going to be one of the worst teams in the NFL. You and I both watched the All-22. Joe Burrow's lack of aggression down the field. Do you think his wrist is still bothering him?
It might be. I think T. Higgins with that surprise injury last second also had a part there. Jamar Chase, don't know what that chemistry is like right now with everything that went on with that contract holdout. So definitely something to watch going forward.
Joe Burrow, he has to play better. They face the Chiefs in week 2, so he has to pick it up real fast. But yes, there were some throws that he just did not attempt and some alarming plays. But overall, Joe Burrow never starts hot week 1 of the NFL season, so we can't overreact too much to that. The Cowboys and the Browns, Deshaun Watson isn't good anymore, and it's going to be really hard for Stefanski to draw up an offense that fits his play style because he doesn't have any great throw in his arsenal anymore. He does not see the field anymore, and he still can kind of break away from sacks, but he's not making any plays after that. So Deshaun Watson, who knows how long of a leash he's going to have. He keeps playing like this. And then the Steelers and Falcons. The Steelers upset the Atlanta Falcons 18-10. The Steelers defensive line dominated. Going to talk more about the Falcons later on in the show. But then we had rookie quarterback struggles. Caleb Williams, Bo Nix, Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels was the best of the bunch, but Caleb and Bo Nix had genuinely horrible debuts, with Bo Nix being historically horrible in his debut. I know Jackson is going to get into that later.
Oh, yeah.
Second-year quarterback performances, I am here to say that I am out on Bryce Young and Will Levis. I had some faith in Will Levis coming into the year, but after watching how he completely gave the game away to the Chicago Bears, I just cannot bring myself to have any faith in him as a quarterback, given that week 1 performance in Bryce Young. There are so many things wrong with the Carolina Panthers, but he is also one of them. He is not devoid of criticism. He very well is contributing to the problem. And when you are a smaller quarterback, you have to have elite accuracy or elite athleticism, and he has neither of those. And Jackson, I just feel like he looks overwhelmed playing in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, there was a play where, and normally I don't buy too much into these kind of things, but there was a play where he kind of got bumped by one of his offensive linemen and just fell down like he was a little kid. And the whole scene over the offensive line thing, I was kind of, I don't think it's really going to be that big of an issue. Kyler seems to do it fine, but it has seemed to be an issue for Bryce Young. He's not seeing the field as well as he did at Alabama. He's not he's not making those same anticipatory throws that he made at Alabama. And I think that's a likely direct factor of the whole size type thing, where he's not able to see the field as well as he was at Alabama, where he was able to anticipate those throws. There's a lot of problems with this team. It's not just Bryce Young. He made some good throws. It felt like all of his bad throws were picked off, and there were a handful of them. I think he had 2 picks, I believe. But
yes,
yeah, and he just kind of failed to get anything going. And then Will Levis, I mean, one of the worst pick sixes you will ever see. That was like the same type of. He had a quote after the game where he said that this is the first time I've thrown a game away like that, and I mean, he obviously didn't watch much of his own tape back in college at Kentucky, so.
He didn't learn from that tape, I guess. Now, Bryce Young had a new play caller, Dave Canales. Also, Will Levis had a new play caller, Brian Callahan. Those, after week 1, suspect looking, but 2 new play callers Liam Cohen for the Buccaneers and Clint Kubiak for the New Orleans Saints looked really good. Derek Carr had 3 touchdowns. They used a ton of motion, something they were dead last year in the NFL, and motion helps out Derek Carr a ton. I mean, even though it is the Panthers, they beat them 47-10, which is a statement win, and I think put the NFC South on notice. And then for Baker Mayfield and the Bucs, 3 touchdowns. Liam Cohen just brought life to this offense. This offense felt much more fluid, and granted, it is against the Commanders' defense, but it felt like the runs had more variations. It felt like the offense that Liam Cohen built around Baker Mayfield caters to all of Baker Mayfield's strengths and the throws that he likes to make on the field.
Yeah, Baker had a really good game. He's improved a lot, and he keeps on getting better. He escapes sacks. He's got that arm strength is starting to lean more towards accurate and arm strength now, as opposed to like kind of wild accuracy with the big arm. It's not a huge arm, but it's a good arm. And I think that just seeing that really meld and the chemistry develop more. He and Mike Evans last weekend they were clicking. And there were throws that looked like Brady to Evans. And I'm not comparing the two, but just in a nutshell. So, yeah, Baker looks primed for a big year.
Baker was that good. And now to finish off the Blitz segment with the final headline in honor of my team, the Jets, it's called Same Old Blank. And we're going to start off with the Jets. Same old Jets losing week 1 to the 49ers after a lot of offseason hype. Aaron Rodgers is healthy, improved offensive line, Mike Williams. They get the brakes beat off of them. It was ugly. The score may look a little bit better than the game actually was. It never felt like the Jets had a chance outside of the very beginning of the first quarter. I'm not panicking on the Jets too much because I know that the 49ers are an elite team, but you do have to be concerned about the pieces they lost on the defensive line and this rush defense getting gashed. I mean, this is what the Jets have hung their hat on over the past couple seasons, this elite defense, and to see them have this poor of a performance against the 49ers, it does make you say, same old Jets. Same old Jaguars. Last year, the Jaguars collapsed down the season, and week 1, they had a 92% win probability in the third quarter, nearing the fourth quarter, but then Travis Etienne fumbles. It leads to a big-time touchdown from Tua to Tyreek Hill, and then the Dolphins are in it, and the Jaguars choke the game away. And it feels more like this year's Jaguars might be last year's Jaguars that are filled with dysfunction, bad play calling, and late moments. I thought Doug Peterson going for it on 4th down in his own territory is one of the dumbest decisions, especially when you take into account the play call. And those are the two teams, more so the Jaguars, that I'm kind of looking at with a side eye because that was a game that you're supposed to win.
Yeah.
And now moving on to stories from week 1, Jackson is going to give his stories from week 1. What do you got, Jackson?
Yeah, so before we move on real quick, let me just give you one more same old, and that's going to be same old Broncos, who are still probably looking for a new quarterback. We might be looking at Drew Lock with less of an arm now, so that's going to be fun these next few years. More on that in a bit, but yeah, Mahomes with speed is scary. All the route combinations that Andy Reid can dial up with Hollywood Brown once he's healthy again, Xavier Worthy, Rashee Rice, and Travis Kelce, it's going to be crazy. The crossers, the lining trips up with an ISO receiver to the opposite side, they can do so much. And with Mahomes, the whole field is available. A roll right means the left side of the field is still there. Typically, coverages roll right with the quarterback. You can't do that with Mahomes. So that's going to be insane to watch. And I think we're really going to see the full potential of that once Hollywood comes back, assuming everyone else stays healthy. Fangio's defense, I think that they looked a little bit rusty or a little bit not like they haven't fully picked up the scheme yet. There was that deep 70-yard touchdown to Reed over the middle where there was a deep crosser. It was trips. I don't know why Fangio was in a cover 3. Fangio is of the Nick Saban tree, and they are all about too high against trips. So that was surprising. And I think that they got caught in the wrong look or the wrong coverage because they motioned Christian Watson late in the play. And I don't think they shifted because if you're in 3, typically the deep middle safety would carry that deep crosser. And he just kind of let him go by. It was a major bust. And to the opposite side, Slay didn't quite get enough depth. You didn't have much depth from the linebackers. It didn't look like they were ready to pick up the route combinations that are most likely to come from a trips look. And so they looked good for long stretches of the game, and they looked bad for decent stretches of the game as well. And they allowed some big chunk plays. The run, they were either 0 yards or 10 yards. It didn't feel like there was much of an in-between. And so that's something that I'm going to be watching going forward, is how well can this defense adjust, and how fast can they pick up the scheme as they go. Anthony Richardson's arm, that was maybe the biggest takeaway of the week. I mean, that throw he made was absolutely insane. And everyone's talking about it, the deep 65 yards in air throw to beat quarters coverage to Alec Pierce. And he was drifting to the left, falling. He slipped, he stumbled, he misstepped, and he stood up and just heaved it. And they were in a quarter shell. So essentially, there was two inline tight ends, and they both stayed into block. So what happens in a quarter shell against two inline tight ends that stay into block is both of those inside safeties shift to bracket with inside leverage the outside receivers. And we saw that, and they doubled Alec Pierce, and Anthony Richardson read that leverage and threw that ball over the top. Like, to read the leverage and know that your receiver can beat the angle that the double in quarters, which is meant to essentially take that away. That's what the inside leverage safety is doing, is taking away the post cut. And to read that leverage while you're slipping and throw it 65 yards, it was one of the most spectacular football plays I've ever seen. And like, you guys can watch it. I'm sure everyone's already seen it, but we'll probably break that down in a film review on Thursday. But moving on, Justin Fields in Pittsburgh, I thought he looked solid. He was not what you'd hope, but he was better than you'd expect. His throw chart was like nothing in the middle of the field and everything outside the numbers, which, I mean, credit to Arthur Smith for sticking to his strengths. But he had a couple really good deep balls to Pickens. He had one where he rolled a little to the left. It was a little designed like reset flip. He flipped his hips with good technique and threw an absolute laser into, I believe it was a cover 6. It was the 2 side of the 6. It was a deep outcut in between that flat defender and then the over the top safety. And it was a dart. It was a laser. And he threw that in with so much torque and velocity. And it was, I want to say it was late in the first half. I could be off on that, but yeah, no, it was a great throw. And Kirk Cousins in Atlanta, that was there was a video going around of him not really planting his foot, and that was that foot where he popped the Achilles. So you always worry about that. Is it mental? Is it physical? Is there pain? I did watch some of his other throws. There were a handful where he was planting and throwing off it, but that play still stands out because he seemed to favor it and avoid it. And he was also very inaccurate. It was a very bad Kirk Cousins game. He was under intense pressure from TJ Watt all game, but still a very poor game from Cousins. The Bills receivers, there's a lot of guys out there. Shakir made some plays, but I think they're going to need someone to win and create separation if they're going to contend. And I don't know if they can trust anyone to consistently do that right now. I think the Chargers are kind of in a similar spot. Joe Alt was excellent, but I still look at Neighbors like, you should have got that guy. That's the more important addition to this team right now, but we'll see what Jim Harbaugh does there. But Caleb Williams, it was a bad game, and it was a really bad game. He was missing throws that he should not have been missing. He was making some good reads and just missing. He was scrambling. He took an 18-yard sack. However, I look at it very differently than Bo Nix's game, where those two games, you could argue they were equally bad in terms of the negatives that they were to their respective teams, right? But Williams has the ability to do it, whereas Bo Nix, I don't think he has the ability to do it. And the ball dies when it comes out of his arm. He has no juice in that arm. And to top that off, I mean, the reads he was making were awful. When he wasn't checking it down, he was throwing into triple coverage. There was a basic cover three that he threw right into a hook curl defender. There was literally no movement. The pre-snap look of the hook curl defender, he was standing there. Ball was snapped. It was a quick little in cut to 17. I think that's Mims, if I'm not wrong. But he just right to the hook curl defender. He dropped the pick, as did many other defenders in this game. But I just don't. Where with Williams, I'm like, he's going to get this together. He's got the talent. We've seen it over and over and over again. I just don't think that Bo Nix has the talent. And prove me wrong. I mean, I think he's a project to get to Brock Purdy. Maybe he gets there. Maybe he's got a coach to do it. And if he does, good for him. But I'm not buying any stock in that.
I mean, Brock Purdy, he even has some things to him that are good, like his processing, his decision-making. Those things are good traits for Brock Purdy, and he does have more juice in his arm than Bo Nix. I think it is warranted to be concerned about Bo Nix. It is I'm not kidding, Jackson. It is one of, or probably the worst rookie quarterback debut I have ever seen.
Yeah. No, it was bad.
It was that.
Yeah, there was that out cut that he threw into with three defenders in the area, and the ball just kind of died halfway in the air and just slowly went right into the defender. Yeah, I mean, and the checkdowns, everything, like I think is at halftime, it was like a 2-point-something yards per attempt. They were like better off running the ball up the gut with Ezekiel Elliott than throwing the ball with Bo Nix in that game. Sam Darnold, kind of on the contrary, a guy who looked rough early in his career. And is this for real? The Giants are pathetic. They put up no fight. Kevin O'Connell cooked. There was this beautiful pump fake to the Justin Jefferson motion bubble screen. The coverage defender that was supposed to take Jalen Naylor out and up bit on the pump fake. So it was kind of a schemed throw that Darnold just kind of had to put on the money, and it was slightly underthrown, but it was wide open, so it's okay. But there was a beautiful dart downfield to Justin Jefferson. It was like a 45-yard completion down the left sideline where he threw with beautiful touch. He showed off his arm. I want to see if that's real, and they've got the Niners next week, so we're going to find out pretty soon. If he's got a good game, if they beat the Niners, or if he plays really well and it's a good game, I think that people are going to really be talking about Darnold after next weekend.
Now, let me ask you something, Jackson, real quick. Sam Darnold, and this is not a long-term projection. I'm just talking about this year. Sam Darnold or Caleb Williams this year, who will have better stats? Who's going to have a better season?
Oof. Darnold. I'm going to say Darnold.
Darnold.
I mean,
I need Sam.
Okay, but it's close. In preseason, I would have said Caleb, but Rome's now hurt, and Caleb really struggled, and Darnold didn't. So I think, we adjust to new information, and with the new information we have, I think I'm pivoting from slightly leaning Caleb to slightly leaning Sam Darnold. So,
and the Vikings beat the Niners last year.
They did, and that was a hell of a game. I was actually there in Minneapolis for that. So that was one of the best games I've ever been at. So we'll see if they can do that again.
Next takeaway.
Baker was really good, and the Bucs might be really good. Like, they might be an 11 or maybe 12-win team. So,
oh, wow. You're that high on the Buccaneers.
Maybe. I mean, yeah. Look, their division right now, and they might be that.
So you take the Bucs over the Saints?
Yeah, pretty easily. Okay.
Yeah,
and
I feel like the
Falcons are struggling too.
Here.
I don't know. I'm like, I mean, the Panthers are pathetic. It's kind of like the Vikings beating the Giants. I'm like, okay, you just walloped the Panthers. Like, good job. Let's see if it's real. I don't really think it's real. So, we're not giving too much credit to the Vikings either, right? Like, they smacked a pathetic team. So that's where I'm at with that.
I think that's fair. Now, RBIS is a metric that you came up with. We touched on it on the first episode of Weekly Blitz. If you did not watch that first episode, just a quick reminder that RBIS is a running back metric that measures yards after contact and basically a running back's performance, trying to individualize it as much as possible to see who are the best running backs. Now, RBIS last year, Jackson, Joe Mixon was bad. He had a great game. Ramondre had a great game as well. Kenneth Walker had a great game, but he was great in RBIS. And J.K. Dobbins has, I figure, always been good. He's just been hurt. Now, give me an update on RBIS. And are you switching your stance a little bit on watch running backs that had great games like Mixon and Alvin Kamara?
So Alvin Kamara was pretty low in the RBIS this week. Let me check. Kamara was at a 2.5. The mean was actually for this week 4.0, which is the same as what the mean was last year, which was pretty interesting. But yes, I mean Mixon too. I think these guys. Mixon had what was it? He had a massive. He had like a 1.9 yards before contact number. He had very good yards after contact. Missed tackles forced were a little underwhelming. He finished a little below average in RBIS this week. It was a good game from him. I'm not sold on him being that guy going forward. That if you want to buy the Texans O-line as a top 10 unit that can produce top 10 numbers for RBIS or for yards before contact, I mean, go for it. I'm not buying that. So, so the top 10 were, I'll just run through them real quick. So we had J.K. Dobbins at a 9.0. We had Ramondre Stevenson at an 8.7. We had Aaron Jones at a 7.5. Jaleel McLaughlin at a 7.0. That one's really interesting because it was a tough game running for the Broncos. It was a tough game in general for the Broncos. But we had Tank Bigsby next. We had Tony Pollard, Kenneth Walker, and David Montgomery. Something that I found really interesting there was Tony Pollard's yards after contact was 4.4. And that was kind of going back to his 2 years ago, his Cowboy season where he was just a yards after contact monster. And he got the bulk load of the carries. We thought it was going to be more of a time split. We'll see if it becomes that. But he had a really good game. He had a 25% forced missed tackle rate, which is well above average. And then Tank Bigsby, that was really interesting. They both had the same amount of carries. They had 12. And Tank Bigsby in this game looked like the better running back. He dealt with some fumbling issues last year, and Travis Etienne was really good last year. And we just saw him kind of fade away into that like distant handcuff secondary running back kind of role. But that's going to be something to monitor. Etienne also had that fumble that got knocked out, and the defense recovered in the end zone. So that got Bigsby in the doghouse last year. So if that becomes a problem this year for Etienne, that could flip. Bigsby's a good talent. And the bottom 10 RBIS scores, the bottom one's really interesting, but Bucky Irving at a negative 1.1. Devon Achane, who had a 0.2, he was the number one last year, and now he had the second lowest score this week, 0 forced missed tackles. Jonathan Taylor, Gus Edwards at 1.3, Ezekiel Elliott at 1.3, Alexander Madison at 1.4, Travis Etienne at 2.1, Isaiah Pacheco at 2.3, Jahmyr Gibbs at 2.4, and Ty Chandler at 2.4. And I think I skipped Jonathan Taylor's score. It was a 1.2. And just remember, the mean for RBIS is a 4.0. So all of these guys well below that mean.
Yeah, so with you giving your top 10 and bottom 10, here's my main takeaways. With the top 10, my main takeaway is that I should have drafted Jaleel McLaughlin over Javonte Williams in fantasy, because it seems like McLaughlin is more explosive with the ball in his hands, regardless of how it's happening, whether he's running the ball or he's receiving the ball. And Javonte got his touches, but Jaleel finished with more touches in this game, and that could be a sign of things to come. And I think the same can be said for Tank Bigsby, especially after Etienne fumbled in the red zone and essentially cost the Jaguars a game. I think Tank Bigsby, he runs very physical. He's a physical style runner, but he also has a lot of burst. And I think it's a different contrast to how Travis Etienne runs. And now onto your bottom 10, Bucky Irving is interesting because his offensive line created massive holes for him, as you're probably going to allude to with the numbers, and he didn't force any missed tackles. But I think Bucky Irving is pretty good. Well, what do you think? Do you think that Rachaad White is still the lead clear guy in that backfield?
I think so for now. Bucky Irving only had 9 attempts, so one thing to remember with RBIS is, like, with small samples, they can get wacky. So we're not putting too much into one game, especially 9 carries from one game. He had 5 1.3 yards before contact, which is elite. He did not force a single missed tackle, and he had a pretty terrible 1.5 yards after contact, 1.56 yards after contact. So he was getting massive holes. He was getting over 5 yards before he was touched. He was going down basically on first contact, and he didn't make anyone miss on any of those 9 carries. So, to contrast that with Rashad White had a 0.17 yards before contact. So Rashad White was not getting anything. None, absolutely none. And he forced 1 missed tackle. So, it wasn't very good either. He was, he had a 2.5 RBIS as well, which is pretty poor and pretty close to what he did last year as well. But, yeah, I mean, the thing is, this backfield doesn't have much talent. So if this isn't talking about Bucky Irving supplanting Travis Etienne like Tank Bigsby would have to do, we're talking about supplanting Rashad White, who everyone's very well aware of his inefficiencies as a runner throughout the years.
Now, everybody listening, guys, you have to keep in mind that this is just week 1. So the numbers can look very different week to week. This is not the end-all, be-all, but that is the RBIS update. Rookie spotlight. Jackson, who is the good and the bad rookie that you want to touch on?
Yeah, so for the good rookie, I've got Brian Thomas Jr. He had 44 yards or something like that. Which is fine. He had a touchdown, which was nice, and he got both his feet in bounds, which is what the Jaguars receivers failed to do last year. So that was great to see. He also, though, he had Jalen Ramsey for a portion of the game following him around the field, and he cooked Jalen Ramsey on an inside release. It was a deep post, I believe, and Jalen Ramsey had to interfere to prevent a touchdown. He drew PI, and it's at like a yard into the end zone or something. And it was very interesting. One, the attention to put your top corner on Brian Thomas Jr. and not Christian Kirk, who's a solid receiver. He had a bad drop in this game, but he's a solid receiver. And they were saying, no, Brian Thomas is the guy we want to try and take away. And Brian Thomas still got a touchdown, almost got another. Cooked Jalen Ramsey. I mean, it was nasty. Jalen Ramsey was impressed, and he missed, and Brian Thomas got him inside, and he was off running, and we know he can run. So, I think that he's going to have a big year. And bad was Bo Nix. Who else? 42 attempts for 138 yards is an incredible accomplishment in all the worst ways possible. And again, his arm it has no juice. Everything's a check down. And he made bad decisions to compound them. So he should have had even more interceptions, and he can't read basic cover 3s. So all the way out on Bo Nix once again. So
yeah, I know that in the preseason everybody was high on Bo Nix. They make him out to be like the next Drew Brees and Sean Payne's protege and all those things. And he's getting a little bit too much leeway, I would say, for this week 1 game. I know a lot of people are really hard on him for this game, and I think they should be, because it was generally one of the worst debuts that we've ever seen from a quarterback. In the same breath, I don't think this was a game where Mike McDonald threw the kitchen sink at him, and he's just like, I'm confusing you because, oh man, you're such a challenging quarterback to play against, and you can pick us apart, so I have to throw things at you. I really think that Mike McDonald laid out a basic game plan and didn't try to fool Bo Nix all that much. I think Bo Nix was just fooled by simple things, and the arm strength that you're talking about, the lack of juice. This is the issue with drafting a quarterback in the first round that doesn't have a high ceiling, because if he doesn't reach that high ceiling with a quarterback that you take that's ultra talented, that's fine. The gamble was worth it because you know what it can be. With Bo Nix, that high ceiling is like a rookie year Mac Jones. There's not much to it. So what are you really getting out of this when you draft a guy this high in the draft? And this is Sean Payne's first round draft pick since being on the Broncos.
Yeah, and I thought he was going to come in and be decent, low-end starter. I thought like shades of Gardner Minshew, maybe, like someone who can run the offense, hit that intermediate range with good timing, read a defense, but he's not doing any of that right now. It is 1 game, but if like the mistakes they seem like they run deep, and I'm sure that Sean Payton is extremely concerned, despite what he says about it to the media.
Yeah, and Sean Payne was blaming everybody. Oh, the coaches
Yeah.
didn't do a good job, the receivers, the offensive line, the rushing attack. And I thought it was Sean Payne trying to just make himself look good by not
Yeah.
admitting to the media that, oh, yeah, I fucked up this pick. I got it
He's
wrong.
got an ego. Yeah, he's
Yeah.
got an ego, and that's his guy. And he wants to show everyone. I mean, he was right after the draft. He tried to say something about how he baited the Vikings into trading up for JJ McCarthy. And wow, if you want to say that, you better have your first round pick quarterback go out and look a hell of a lot better than he did. So because now he just looks ridiculous. So
Yeah, for sure.
yeah,
My rookie spotlight is Joe Alt, and I'm just going to have a good one because I was trying to swift through the bad ones, and I was like, the bad ones I don't really want to talk about because Marvin Harrison Jr., I feel like could have had a better game. It wasn't really that bad. But my one is Joe Alt, 19 pass blocking snaps, 0 pressures allowed. I thought Joe Alt looked pretty damn good, and I understand it was very controversial for them to draft him over Malik Neighbors and a wide receiver. This is hardball ball, and the way that the Chargers won against the Raiders is how they're going to have to win almost every game they play in this season. And I think because of their schedule, they'll get to a decent amount of wins. But Joe Alt is at least a building block on that offensive line. You now have Slater and Alt.
Yep.
Those are 2 franchise tackles, in my opinion. And now you just look to next year to just adding some more weapons to help Justin Herbert out. But Herbert is a great enough quarterback that he can at least make a couple big-time throws a game to win the Chargers games if they have that support around him. Now, also risers and fallers, we're going to give our risers and fallers. It can be a team or player. My riser, Jackson, is going to be the New Orleans Saints. I understand they beat the Panthers 47-10, but I kind of am buying into the Saints. Last year, they quietly finished as a top 10 offense and defense in terms of points scored and points allowed. Also, their defense, we know that the defense is really damn good. They added some defensive line help in the offseason with Chase Young, and I think they have players getting better like Brian Bryce, who I'm a really big fan of. I think that defensive line is going to cause havoc. And I look at a team like the Saints, who just got a new offense coordinator in Clint Kubiak, who showed us very early on that I know who my quarterback is. I know how to get the best out of this quarterback, and this is how we're going to run our offense. And that coincides with my faller, the Atlanta Falcons. They're a faller to me because I think this offensive line has been getting overrated all offseason long. People talk about the Falcons like they have this elite offensive line of a unit, and that's just simply not true. They have some major holes on that offensive line, and they're an average unit, I think, when everything goes right. Even last year, I thought they were pretty average and underwhelming. The play caller clearly doesn't know or is not adjusting to Kirk Cousins' strengths because he ran pistol almost all the time, 50% of the time against the Steelers. Kirk Cousins in Minnesota always played with his right foot in front of his left. And in the pistol offense, he's now playing even. But the most concerning thing is not only the play caller doesn't understand the strengths of his quarterback, but it's also that said quarterback coming off a pretty bad injury, the same one that Aaron Rodgers had, an Achilles injury. He does not have any power in that plant leg. And on already limited quarterback that didn't have high upside traits is getting limited even more. I don't think Kirk Cousins is the savior the Falcons thought he would be. The receivers are thin, and also the defense, I think, is good. It's okay. I don't think it's anything overwhelmingly great. This team kind of feels like it's going to have a disappointing season, and they are my faller.
Yeah, they really could have used that 9th pick on someone, couldn't they? Someone to help them right now.
Or they could have not paid Kirk and just drafted a quarterback, and that's it.
Yeah.
And just use the money.
Either one. They both make sense. They both make sense.
Yes.
Quick question for you before we transition to mine here. So, are you taking Derek Carr stats or Sam Darnold stats this year?
I'm gonna go with Derek Carr. Go with Derek Carr.
Okay.
Yeah.
A little nostalgia there.
Yeah, I like Derek Carr. He's my guy.
Okay. So my riser is Indiana. Look, they lost. I get it, but Anthony Richardson's arm is special, and he missed Adonai Mitchell multiple times for huge plays. And no excuse, they were bad misses. But Adonai Mitchell's speed and size with Anthony Richardson's arm. I mean, we saw what Alec Pierce's speed did, and like he's maybe he makes a jump. I'm not ruling him out, but like Adonai Mitchell is that guy when it comes to speed, size, and route running ability. And I think that like that's going to be nasty. And Indiana played a really close game against the Texans. They fought till the end. And I think they showed that they're going to be in a lot of good games and they're going to win a lot of games. And Anthony Richards, they're going to put up points. And like those deep balls are not going to be missing all the time to Adonai Mitchell. If he hit a few of those, like they probably win by double digits if he hits 2 out of the 3 that he missed. So, yeah, that's my riser. And then my faller is the Bengals, who I think lost basically everybody's Survivor League. They lost mine. So we all kind of assumed that they were going to go in and get an easy win, and their defense could not stop what everyone knew was coming. Ramondre Stevenson. Like, that's what the Patriots are going to do. They have Jacoby Brissett, and when Jacoby Brissett dropped back to pass, he was efficient. They got first downs, and they sustained drives. And the Bengals Joe Burrow wasn't really threatening the defense. It was a lot of checkdowns. They had a weird balance of play calling. It felt like there wasn't much flow to it. And yeah, I mean, they've got a really easy schedule. So, and they had T. Higgins out again. They had Jamar Chase just coming back. So I think that there's a good shot they get it together and still make playoffs with that easy schedule. But that's concerning, losing to a team as bad with as little to work with as the Patriots had. So
I was looking at the EPA and success rate stats, and the Bengals run defense had a 43% success rate, which ranked 9th in week 1. They were very successful in stopping the run in moments, I will say. And I think the biggest Achilles heel with this Bengals defense, their run defense, is not the fact that they can't fill in the run fits. It's that they couldn't finish tackles. I thought that the Bengals defense, they actually were there. They were there to make plays in the backfield, to get stops, to stop runs from going to 5 yards and getting only, maybe 3-yard gains. They could not tackle at the second level. Defensive linemen, their corners, they were missing easy tackles, and that is something that, you have to monitor. It's also something that I'm thinking about, and I'm saying, hey, I think this is maybe something that can be fixed with more playing time. You can tackle better, and maybe this run defense isn't as bad as we're making it out to be after this game, even though it is the Patriots, so I understand the panic because it is the Patriots.
Yeah, and Ramondre Stevenson, again, second highest RBIS, 8.7, and 4.7 yards after contact.
Yeah.
0.1 yards before contact. So he was getting touched at the line on average every carry in 25 attempts. And on top of that, he had a 40% missed tackle force rate on 25 carries. So yeah, a really bad job by the Bengals defense.
Yeah, it was pretty horrible. The Bengals now have a big test going into Kansas City, and that leads me into the last segment of the show. It's looking on to week 2 and giving our dog of the week, the underdog of the week. The Bengals plus 3.5. I was thinking about it, and then I was like, man, it's the Chiefs. I can't do it. It's the Kansas City Chiefs, and they have such a better offense this year. I picked the Giants plus 2.5 versus the Commanders. Money line going straight up with them. I think the Giants can beat the Commanders. Daniel Jones has success against them throughout his career. The Commanders still have a terrible defense, and their offense is not that good either. If there's a team that the Giants can bounce back against, I think it is Washington.
Yeah, and I've got the Bills. I think that if I've got money on the line, I am betting on Josh Allen over Tua. Tua made some good throws in the second half, but he looked kind of like a mess in that first half. He didn't get much going. They've lost some guys. Their defense has holes. Their offensive line and their offense has holes. Well, mainly the line. But I think Achane is dealing with an injury now too. So there's a lot of things going on there. And the Bills also have some issues. The receivers, no one really stood out. But give me Josh Allen every time with money on the line over Tua. That's where I'm at right now.
Do it for episode 2 of the Weekly Blitz. My name is Joe Moran. I am with Jackson McIntyre. We will see you guys next week. And this week, possibly a film breakdown will be coming out, so stay tuned for that. Thank you for watching. Make sure you guys subscribe and like the video, and we'll see you guys next time.